It's been months since ZenlessZoneZero launched, and let's be honest, we've all felt the pain of losing a 50-50 or watching the standard banner crush our dreams. But now you've hit 300 pulls, and it's time to make a game-changing decision. Who should you pick from the stable, aka non-limited, banner? Well, don't worry, today I'll be breaking down the pros and cons of every option, alongside some team recommendations. And with this information, you'll be able to make the best choice for your account. Without further ado though, let's get into it. Now, I did lie because I do actually want to include a warning and disclaimer before we talk about the major influencing factors for this choice. And with this, what I want to say initially is that this is a guide with recommendations based on my experience and time testing these characters. However, if you decide that at any point a character is your favorite, by all means feel free to choose them, and this video is not necessarily made for you. With that said, there are now two questions or factors that I consider to be very important when selecting your free S-rank agent. First, will this choice unlock a powerful mindscape? And second, is the character actually useful? Now, technically there's a third factor here to consider, and that's whether this choice would unlock missing characters from your account's roster. If the selector lets you obtain missing characters on your account, it could be helpful towards your account's progression. While not the biggest priority, this offers benefits like greater team versatility and the ability to swap out agents to better counter boss element weaknesses. Additionally, ZenlessZoneZero's endgame is designed with 2 or 3 unique team compositions required, so there's value in this sense too. Now, this does also come with weaknesses and concerns, as sometimes building weaker characters to then later learn that a new limited character will outperform them can simply feel bad. But let's move to the next important and more priority factors to consider. The first factor we need to talk about is mindscapes, and this is directed towards players who have lost several 50-50s, have now unlocked all standard characters on the banner, and are now unsure about who to pick next. In this scenario, evaluating the mindscapes of agents is important. Some agents' mindscapes have better benefits than others, and this can dictate your choice too. The second factor that plays a big part in your choice will be the agent's performance and feel. While taking agents that you're missing for flexibility or for a shiny new mindscape may be nice, it's equally as important to remember that certain agents are just weaker and can actually be a worse choice if taken in place of others. Now that we know what's important in regards to our agent choice, let's move to each character and what their strengths/weaknesses are. Soldier 11 is a solid fire DPS with a simple yet effective playstyle, and was the go-to fire DPS prior to Evelyn and Bernice's banners. Her fire suppression mechanic enhances her basic attacks and abilities, which allow her to then deal constant fire damage and maintain consistent DPS. She also has strong burst potential, with new discoveries like the chain attack cancel being especially powerful when utilized properly on her. Despite all this, however, Soldier 11 is not a top tier DPS and is outclassed by limited characters in terms of raw damage output. To add, in order to even remain competitive or perform above other DPS, players will need to optimize her gameplay heavily with things like timing her basic attacks perfectly or performing a 4-chain attack combo. Considering both her strengths and weaknesses as a whole though, Soldier 11 still remains a strong option for the selector if you're looking to use a fire DPS that isn't Bernice or Evelyn. Additionally, even when element isn't the focus, she does still perform decently in general endgame content until better premium options become available. Grace is an S-rank anomaly agent who specializes in electric damage and shock application. Her strengths include the ability to build shock quickly and having a decently low cost EX special to then spam her attacks. Now, while this is the case, her damage source primarily being shocks that she has to cast while on field means that she takes more time and effort than her peers to deal damage. This added time and effort can be challenging to work around in time sensitive scenarios, even if the time and fight favors having Grace to begin with. But this then begs the question, for what reason would you take Grace in a fight if she deals less damage and requires more effort to do so as well? With both her strengths and weaknesses, it's clear that Grace has lower value than someone like Soldier from a DPS standpoint, but she does still have the role of an anomaly applier. Because of this, if you don't have Yanagi, Grace can still have value in offering a way to apply disorder on teams that need it. Nekomata is an S-rank physical agent known for her fast-paced playstyle. She has exceptional mobility, with her basic and dash attacks letting her reposition in battle, and her EX special attack is extremely low energy cost, meaning that she can use it more frequently than other characters. Additionally, since she is from the Cunning Hares faction, she can satisfy her team condition easily even as a free-to-play player. However, Nekomata does have notable drawbacks. She relies heavily on dodge counters and quick assists to maintain her core passive, which can then be difficult to manage depending on the fight or situation. To add, Nekomata also has to consider several different factors during combat. This includes maintaining her core passive during stun damage windows, where she must first use a support to provide quick assists, or she risks missing out on a huge damage boost. The main issue with this and other optimizations realizations is that quick assist or timing such setups can create frustration in her gameplay, both feeling wise and in terms of her DPS. On a final note, she is also constantly compared to Jane, who does admittedly share a similar look and feel in terms of playstyle. Now, although Jane and other DPS already outpace Nekomata's damage, what's actually worse is that Nekomata has to compete with characters like Billy, who even share the same class type as her as a physical attacker himself. Overall, Nekomata struggles the most out of all these standard banner options, given the extra care and investment she needs to maintain for her damage in combat. This, while already having competitors who perform similarly to her, causes her to struggle as a character choice entirely, regardless if it's for a niche or general purpose. Rina was the first introduced S-rank support agent, specializing in shock buffs and team-wide damage increases. Her gameplay revolves heavily around her two puppets, which remain on the field briefly after she casts abilities. And while the puppets are active, Rina provides her most important buff to the team, a 25% pen ratio increase. In addition to this, she also extends shock durations from 10 to 13 seconds, which improves shock uptime greatly. But if all this wasn't enough already, she also provides a 10% electric damage boost when an enemy is shocked. Despite these buffs, however, Rina also has very clear weaknesses. Many of her abilities last multiple seconds and briefly lock her in animation, preventing her from casting new abilities until previous ones finish. This can make using her feel clunky or uncomfortable. What's worse is that to fully capitalize on her pen ratio buff, her puppets must also be redeployed constantly, requiring constant management of the buff duration. This actually leads us to the topic of mindscapes, however, which is something that we need to talk about in relation to Rina. Choosing Rina for her M1 has some of the best value on this list, as this drastically changes the way that she plays. Though you can consider this part weakness, part strength, it's clear that having Rina's puppets stay out for longer is a major quality of life to her gameplay. And with this, Rina's M1 ends up being one of the best choices for anyone who already has every character at M0. Now, Rina, though weaker with only her M0 available, is still a great choice for any players who can take the time to master her kit. The team-wide buffs, the support she provides, and the power she brings to electric teams is unmatched, so if you don't own Rina already, she is a strong contender for who you should pick as a priority agent. Koleda is an S-rank stunner focusing heavily on daze application, though it's more commonly known that one of her best features is her ability to daze quickly with her powerful EX special and dodge counter. She also provides a lesser known chain attack damage increase debuff to the enemy. With Evelyn's release, this also means that the two can be paired well together, even though this buff isn't always necessary in every situation. Additionally, as a stunner, Koleda already fits into most team compositions without feeling like she's holding the team back, since fights can be easier when the boss is stunned or the enemy stops moving. On top of this, she is easy to play, making her a solid pick for players who want a simple but impactful agent, no pun intended. Moving to her weaknesses, she does have a few. Her attack animations are longer and slower than you desire, with some moves locking her into animations and removing your ability to react accordingly. This can cause her to feel awkward when played, and I especially have found myself annoyed whenever I'm using an enhanced basic combo and am flying in the air when I'm trying to reach the ground so that I can perform a defensive assist. Now it's time we talk about Koleda's mindscapes. Though Rina is definitely the best choice for initial duplicate copies of agents, getting Koleda's M1 is also decent given the increased daze value. To be clear though, Koleda typically overstuns enemies and doesn't need too much help when it comes to dazing. That being said, if Rina is M6 already, or if you simply don't want Rina, getting Koleda's mindscapes is a decent choice. Taking into account both her weaknesses and strengths now, Koleda's value is already high simply because of her role as a stunner. For certain team compositions that have agents with stun-reliant kits, Koleda automatically serves as a good option to pair with them. Now, although Evelyn is best paired with Lighter over Koleda, she is still worth using alongside Evelyn or virtually any DPS that needs quick daze application in general. Lycaon is an S-rank stunner, excelling in daze application and ice-related buffs/debuffs. Through his kit, he provides good value to the team with things like his ability to increase the standard stun multiplier from 150 to 185%, and additionally, his core ability applies a 25% ice resistance shred for 30 seconds. If the ice shred itself didn't already sell you on its value, the fact that this lasts 30 seconds definitely should, since this is basically permanent uptime. Now, while these buffs are nice, Lycaon has some serious issues in terms of playstyle. His charged basic attack feels clunky at times while also requiring proper timing, but even this aside, he can also demand a noticeable amount of time on field depending on how you play him. Like Koleda, we should now address Lycaon's mindscapes as well. Similar to Koleda, this is an agent whose mindscapes provide mild bonuses to the stunners themselves, so they aren't insanely strong, but given the added daze from his M1 and the mild energy increase from his M2, Lycaon is another decent option for accounts that have every agent already. Overall, Lycaon is a solid option and worth it when whenever pairing him alongside other ice-based agents, but his playstyle can sometimes create an awkward feeling when played. To add, one of his best partners is Miyabi, but she herself doesn't need Lycaon at all for the purposes of dealing massive damage, so his value does drop slightly here too. Now that we have all characters analyzed, let's address the burning question on everyone's mind. Who is the strongest and what order of priority is there for these characters? As a final disclaimer, so that I don't enrage all of these agents fans, you are more than welcome to pick any character, and I'm sure you can make them OP if you love them hard enough. However, from my research, testing, and experience, the order is as follows. Rina is the clear choice for anyone who doesn't have her, and also the best choice on an account that has all characters too. Following this is Koleda or Lycaon as utility-based stunners, but selecting one or the other is more dependent on what kinds of teams are available on the account. To round out the list, Soldier 11 and Grace are both decent options if you're lacking DPS of a certain element, or if you just want a damage dealer in general. However, at the end of the list is Nekomata, who I sincerely recommend against choosing, given the difficulty of managing her abilities and playing her as well. Also that you can just do less damage than most of the cast anyway. With the characters in summary finished, this is now where I have a few teams I recommend for each agent. To be clear though, some teams have variations to them, like with stunners being replaceable and double support teams being viable. That aside, let's begin. Soldier has two teams that I recommend specifically. One is a more premium option and the other is more free to play. Soldier, Lighter, Astra is by far one of the best compositions for her, but swapping out Lighter for Koleda or Astra for Caesar can work here too if you have them. By contrast, Soldier 11's best free to play team is Soldier 11 Ambi Lucy. Grace has one team that I specifically wanted to talk about, and this was Miyabi Grace Rina. This team offers decent burst and disorders when necessary, but this is a much more Miyabi focused team, with Grace getting carried along the way, not doing much at all. As a result, the other teams that I suggest for actually getting to see value from Grace are Bernice Grace Rina as her premium option and Anton Grace plus a support as the free to play option. Like with Soldier's teams, Rina or Astra can sometimes replace or be replaced by others like Lucy or Seth, so long as the team's additional abilities are satisfied. Nekomata's best premium teams are Nekomata Chingy and a flexible support between Caesar and Nicole. For her free to play options, she has Nekomata Ambi Nicole, which makes sense given that these two characters are free at the start of the game. Both of these team compositions revolve around stunning and buffing Nekomata with plenty of damage increases, but it should also be noted that a third team of Nekomata Piper plus a support is also decent when highly invested in. Rina's best team is more complicated as she herself is a generic support that can pair well with almost any team. However, she does perform amazingly with Miyabi given how long it takes for Miyabi's enhanced basic attack to perform. In the time that this animation is playing, Rina can swap onto field and reapply her pen ratio buff, which makes this one of the more skill intensive but actually very satisfying and smooth feeling team combos. With this, Miyabi Yanagi Rina is an amazing candidate for Rina's best premium team, and Haramasa Ambi Rina is powerful as a free to play choice. Koleda's best premium team is Evelyn Koleda Astra, with her free to play team being Soldier Koleda Lucy. These teams play pretty similar to each other, with chain attacks and basic attacks playing a major part in the gameplay loop of each team. To add, the buffers on this team don't spend too much time on field as they primarily buff for a moment and then are swapped out immediately after. To be honest, these two teams were some of the easiest to play in the game, which is a relief considering their damage is also pretty respectable too. Lycaon like Koleda has two teams that play similar to each other, and that's Miyabi Lycaon Astra and Sokaku Lycaon Nicole. Both of these teams focus on applying buffs, stunning, and then unloading burst damage from the main damage dealer, but as I mentioned earlier, something worth noting about Miyabi is that she doesn't really need a stunner to deal damage. That being said, Miyabi Lycaon Astra is definitely one of Lycaon's best premium teams, with Sokaku Lycaon Nicole being unconventional yet successful if you don't have access to any limited ice DPS. That's gonna be it for today's video though, guys. Hopefully you learned something while watching today's video. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you check out the rest of my socials. If you like, comment, turn on the notification bell, and subscribe. And I want to thank you guys all just for watching. As always, guys, I try to improve my content, and I appreciate all the feedback that you guys give me. With that though, I will see you guys on the next one. Stay safe, stay healthy. Good night.